2016, we also were asked again by the EAC to discuss the on-site contamination concerns. And with that, we produced the letter to the township, and it is on the DEP website. And for that, we concluded that we did think additional assessment should go on. Most of the concern has been around the TCE. There's obviously a lot of breakdown products of TCE, other chlorinated solvents. But as you've heard today, there's also metals and other concerns that we expressed about on-site assessment that we think still needs to be done. Some of the areas to the north of the buildings, and especially metals, because we know it was a precious metal site, tubing site, and the TCE is actually quite high, and we have concerns about vapor intrusion if you build residential properties above it. So we noted all those things in our letter to the township, and it is on the website.
Great.
We've been in the village for a very long time, not as long as some of you guys, but my daughter Elizabeth was born in 1990, and the factory was still open then. Closed in 1999. In 2006, Liz had a brain tumor, and she's had 3 since then. And the point I want to make, health issues is huge, is one thing, but the other thing I want to say is one of the most brilliant things that Dr. Phillips, her oncologist at Children's Hospital, said to us is that as much as we know about brain tumors in the brain, we don't know. And after hearing what you had to say, I just want to hear, we don't know how to clean up TCEs. You tried 2 different things to do. It's down in the bedrock. So I want someone to say, as much as we know, and that we are experts at what we know, that's what we don't know. Because that's what I'm hearing tonight.
So first off, I'd like to know why the court reporter is here, for whom is the court reporter here, and what's the purpose?
She's not our court reporter.
I would like to know who she is.
She's retained by me,
Who is me?
Lou Pellegrini.
On behalf of whom?
I'm in my client.
For what purpose?
For my purpose.
Who's your client?
For my purpose.
Okay, and who's your client?
I'm a Constitution judge.
Okay, so just so everybody is aware, Constitution Drive Partners has a court reporter here. Constitution Drive Partners has filed a SLAPP suit against the Delaware Riverkeeper Network as well as a private resident. And Mr. O'Neill wanted to encourage me to let you know that before the meeting began, he inappropriately rubbed up against me and said, quote, "Did you get my love note?" His love note was his 3rd serving to me of the SLAPP suit that is intended to shut up and shut down the Delaware Riverkeeper Network. So you all should be aware.
And served on Mother's Day.
Oh, and I was served on Mother's Day. So you should all be aware, if you are choosing to speak, that is who the court reporter is, why the court reporter, for whom they are gathering information, and other activities Mr. O'Neill has undertaken that you should be aware of.
So they're putting
Pardon?
Could you explain for me what kind of suit?
Oh, so it's what's called a SLAPP suit, and truthfully, I don't want to get too much into the weeds. And in fact, we haven't even been served a complaint yet, so I don't even know more than a generalized complaint. But essentially, what a SLAPP suit is, it's a strategic lawsuit that's filed against an organization like mine to try to shut us up. So to try to prevent us from continuing our advocacy. So the Delaware Riverkeeper Network obviously does nothing but act appropriately and tell the truth, and we are backed by science, law, and facts, and so we continue with our important work on behalf of this community. But I did feel it was very important for you to understand who is sitting over there and why they might potentially be sitting there. You should be aware. I think it's also important to note that the court reporter has been sitting here now for well over an hour, and nobody notified you of that. And I think that your township officials have an obligation to let you know. I had it up there while waiting. This is a quote from, no, that's just a quote from the ATSDR letter that was discussed, saying that in fact they said, uses other than residential uses should be considered, but that's not my question. I was just waiting a really long time. I thought people would want to see that. So my question is, as you explained the PPA and the original agreement with the developer in 2005, I think it's important for people to know that just as the setup for the question, that in the 2005 agreement, it talked about, you know, doing the agreed upon work by 2009. It talked about potential commercial use. That's an important thing to know. And then, of course, there were the two amendments that greatly limited what the developer was required to do in order to get the covenant not to sue element of the agreement. The thing that you didn't talk about that I want people to be aware of and that I'm asking a question about, you know, really, why you didn't talk about this. In 2014, DEP made a determination that CDP had, through their action, interfered with or impaired that SVEAS system and potentially exacerbated the existing contamination at the site. And as a result, DEP now considers the covenant not to sue void. It's also just, there were two efforts to get this rolled back. And in 2015, DEP confirmed that the covenant not to sue in the PPA was in fact void. So my question becomes a few-fold. First off, why was the 2007 and 2010, why were the 2007-2010 amendments never publicly noticed? Two, why, now that you've publicly noticed the amendments or the 2010 amendment 7 years later, why did you keep in the covenant not to sue provision? Because it's now void, that you said twice over, so it actually is not in full force and effect. If you're not going to remove it, which seems by all rights you should, why did your public notices for comment not notify the community that you deemed this covenant not to sue void? And also, I wonder, did you, or why did you not, back in January of 2014, tell the township that the covenant not to sue was void? Because had you told the township that, perhaps they wouldn't have rezoned the property residential because they would have been alerted that something was up. So it's a multi-phase question, all related to this DEP determination. And just one final thought. It's looking to me like we're not going to actually get to the public presentation as we had requested, so the Delaware Riverkeeper Network will offer it as a webinar after the fact. Keep your eyes open for that. This kind of information will be presented to you through the webinar, but you will have to sign up for it because, of course, we will not want Mr. O'Neill to be participating in our webinar.
Can you break the questions down?
Sure. So the first question is, why were the 2007 and 2010 amendments not subject to public notice and comment? That's the first question.
The lawyer's not saying.
Just call it what it is.
Under the Hazardous Sites Cleanup Act, we're obligated to publish notice whenever we settle in the document like the prospective purchaser agreement that we have here. So we did publish notice of the original 2005. We subsequently, as Dustin stated, amended that agreement in 2007 and 2010. And there was not any purposeful intent there. We just didn't update the notice there. We didn't realize, actually, we didn't update the public and publish notice of those amendments until recently. So that's why we're publishing them now. Comment period is still open, so you can comment on them. But we realized that we didn't do that, so we wanted to provide those the opportunity to do so now. So it wasn't that we were intending to hide anything, it was that we're making an administrative correction at this time so that we can discuss it.
I believe the Delaware Riverkeeper Network wrote you a letter to alert you to your oversight, and that's why we're doing this. the question is, well, let's backtrack a little bit. Why did you not tell the township in 2014 that you had determined the covenant not to sue to be void, so the township would have had that information when making its zoning decisions? Why did you not tell them, or did you tell them? And perhaps then I ask the township the question, did you ever receive that information? Seems important information, so can you share?
I can't speak to that. I don't have the letter in front of me. I know that
I'll provide it, sir.
That was the Delaware Riverkeeper Network's attorney who is active on this situation.
Get that transcription and get that, thank you.
You're right. It appears that it was not copied to the township.
Okay. And then now that we know, in 2014, reiterated in 2015, after there was an effort by Constitution Drive Partners to appeal the decision, and the Environmental Hearing Board said that it was not appealable, and the attorneys for the Constitution Drive Partners asked DEP to reconsider their rescission, and DEP came back in December of 2015 and said, nope, covenant not to sue is void. So given that critical provision of the deals here, why, when you notice this 2010 document 7 years later in 2017, 3 years after 2014, 2 years after 2015, why did you not remove that provision from the 2010 document because it's void, or at least notify the township and notify the community that a critical provision of the deal was void, and it was voided because the DEP had made this determination that CDP had engaged in action that interfered with or impaired the system and potentially exacerbated the existing contamination at the site. So why is the 2010 notice, is that provision still in? And why didn't you tell anybody that, in fact, the covenant not to sue was void?
So, while I appreciate, I think, the frustration substantively with...
There's no frustration. There's an actual, just direct recitation of facts and a question for explanation.
I think this is a good conversation. I think what the law requires us to do in these updates is to administratively notify you what the new language says. So this issue up here didn't actually take language out. It was simply the DEP stating that it felt a certain way. We didn't take any particular action to enforce that, though. The updates that we provide under the law are to tell you what language we're taking out of the document and what we're replacing that with. So in terms of the technical response, the technicalities of the document, that's what we're required to do under the law. In terms of responding substantively to this, that would not be included under what the law requires us to do.
So you didn't think the community or the municipal officials had the right to know or should know that the covenant not to sue, that critical provision, was void, or that they should know it before they changed zoning on the property, right? Just because the law told you didn't have to do it, you just decided you wouldn't do it.
Well, I think, let me try to respond to the one question first. Again, what we're required to do, and this is what we did in the updates, is administratively update the community in the bulletin and the note in the local publication of the actual language that changed. Whether or not we notified them of our position towards the covenant not to sue at that time, I don't think it's not an issue, but it's something that we would handle separately from this administrative update.
So you didn't think that it would be an appropriate part of the presentation when you so meticulously went through all the elements of the PPA?
Well, I think the reason why you got this document is because we made all these documents public. So
I'm sorry, sir. That's actually not correct. The Delaware Riverkeeper Network has all of these documents because we submitted multiple right-to-know requests and made multiple trips to the Department of Environmental Protection to secure these documents on our own dime. In fact, we did not. And I can show you all those right-to-know documents. And in fact, we have an appeal because we believe we've actually been inappropriately denied some documents we're entitled to. So we are actually appealing that refusal to provide us all the documents right now as we speak.
Okay, and I imagine I can't comment on it until that legal process plays out, as you know. I think we tailored the PowerPoint presentation the way we did those because we wanted to be informative as to the investigation. We really didn't want to get into, and we didn't get into the development side because frankly, we haven't approved the scope of work yet. So we're not at the stage yet where we can comment on what final action might be.
So just again, this is the kind of information we sought to bring to the attention of the community and the township officials, but because you're presumably going to run out of time and not, in fact, be able to accommodate us, I think it's best we will provide all of our information, everything that we've uncovered as a collective, the community, in a webinar.
It's not
Second of all, I want you to know that I know that the contamination there is more pervasive than the 3 areas that we're talking about. I know that there has been major leaks of TCE in the bottom alley where the tank was and the piping next to the major TCE tank. I know that there has been major leaks in the silo operation that leaked all the way out to the back alley. I know that there are 3 acid cesspools with heavy metals, different locations, one by plant 8, one by plant 7. I also know that the floor for 2 years with TCE and the whole top of tank 5 in there. I also know that there was a well, this is TCE hotspot that you have located by the Armco building with a pump nearby a well that comes up to the top of the Hillsborough Reservoir. I also know that they bury chemicals down there. Last of all, I also know that the contamination is not part of this cleanup. This Little Valley Creek that you showed today has numerous spots of contamination on it. Before I end with this, I would like my friend here, Paula Warren, to read a little letter to you people.
My name's Paula Warren, and I wrote this out so I could keep it brief. I live at 54 Conestoga Road, right across from People's Light and Theater. I was born there in 1951, the same year Bishop City began their operation. We are about 10,000 feet downstream on Little Valley Creek. We were informed in 1990 that the water in our well, which we had been drinking innocently since 1953, was contaminated with deadly levels of TCE and many other carcinogens, and we were told we should probably minimize consumption. We were told by the Philadelphia Suburban Water Company to send us a letter. I have no idea why they did, but our little family of 5, 2 parents and 3 children, no family history of cancer, developed 5 different kinds of cancer, which killed my brother and my mother. The relevancy to this meeting, however, is the fact that 27 years later, the groundwater beneath our homes still tests positive for high levels of TCE. And how do I know this? Because the DEP has drilled 3 beautiful monitoring wells on our property. I get the results every so often and the levels remain fairly constant. So what, you may say? Well, it turns out that living upon toxic groundwater, besides rendering our beautiful 1.1 acres totally worthless, is now taking its toll. Memory loss, chronic vertigo, headaches, blindness, decreased mental function, brain fog, and liver failure. We've experienced all of these, and they're all symptoms of exposure to TCE. Our house is trying to kill us. The consequences of breathing TCE air for years can no longer be ignored. The insidiousness of this slow poisoning is evil, as it cannot be seen immediately, but it develops gradually over time. And I think the time has come to shine the light on an East Whiteland nightmare. Perhaps the ones who died of cancer are the lucky ones. They weren't around long enough to get to experience the gift that keeps on giving. Thank you.
is Stephen Schmidt. I'm a resident of the village. I live on Thorncott. Dustin, you've heard by your own admission and the information you presented that the TCE and other contaminants are a problem on the site. Just a personal question. Would you move your family to that development? Still?
Thank you.
No answer? No.
Of course you did. I've seen plenty of them.
We're not going to comment on that.